Namaste, Sitaram, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Cooking with Madho. Today, as we see, the star dish is curry soya. And the first 6 minutes, we will see the cooking. But then I will show you intense preparation techniques afterwards. I hope you enjoy this video because this is not Jamaican Ital style soya. This is my recipe here. How about that? After straining or draining the water, I then squeeze out the moisture from the soya. Right? That's really important. So look at that texture. Right? And maybe this is why people said that it looks a bit like meat. Maybe they have a point. You're probably seeing some seasonings in there, and yes, I have cheated. I've just finely chopped one scallion, a little bit of thyme, and I've even put in some Indian spices. You don't need to do that, but I have done it. You don't have to if you don't want to. I like rich layers of flavor. But if you like probably a more simpler curry, you don't need to do it. So I did put some hing. I did even put some, besides asafoetida, which is a gum, that's the hing. I did put some methi leaves, but that's the Indian style. If you want to make it Jamaican, you don't need to do that. This is how it looks, everything being kind of stir-fried, sauteed, or chunked in there. Chunk, actually. Chunk. So it's the initial saute process in the creation of the curry. We say chunky or chunky. In the Caribbean, it's kind of like a Creole, Bhojpuri word. And that's how it looks. Now, if you see the yellow is coming out from the turmeric. But I will still add my version of my own personal garam masala. I make my own garam masala, people. So I'll cheat. I'll still put my garam masala in. But if you're Jamaican or Grenadian and you just love turmeric and spices and you want to go crazy without the Indian spices, you do that. But I will still put my version of a garam masala there. Now, I'm crazy. This actually has garlic, it has lime, it has scotch bonnet. That goes in. Right, gives it the heat. No Kashmiri chilies, but of course if you're Indian you could use your Kashmiri chili pepper, you could use your mirch. It's your choice how much heat you want. This is scotch bonnet. I do not advise cooking this dish with Caroline Reaper. I do not advise cooking this dish even with ghost peppers or Indian chilies. You're probably shocked by that. I don't like the Indian chilies. They don't give off the flavor like a robust habanero or, quite frankly, a scotch bonnet. Now, if you don't have scotch bonnet and you're not from the West Indies and you can't get it in your West Indian grocery, don't cry down the place. Use any chili or any kind of pepper that gives you some heat. But obviously, avoid jalapenos, avoid, small baby chilies that don't have Scoville heat. The Thai chilies will give you some heat. But the point is, you see West Indian scotch bonnet peppers? They really have flavor. You can't find that? Try to use a habanero. So I did actually put my Indian style garam masala that I made myself. Right? Look at that. Look at how beautiful that is. Right? Now I do want to just make sure this forms a very good curry paste. And I'm going to cover the pot for about a minute, and then I'm going to coat the curry into the actual soya. Lift the pot and that's what we see. Throw in the soya. Don't be shy. Namaste, Sitaram, Assalamu Alaikum. Welcome to Cooking with Madho. Today I'm finally making veggie chunks or soya chunks. A lot of people in Jamaica have asked me to show them how to make my version of soya chunks. So it's a bit of hybrid recipe that is kind of part Indian, part Creole. And I'll show you my basic soya chunks recipe. Now, soya chunks is a product that was actually invented in the early 1970s in India. And it was invented originally to serve as a meat substitute and also as a way of conveniently using the byproducts of leftover soya flour, which was kind of a byproduct when soya bean oil was made. And eventually, in the 1970s, it was decided that this, because it had good protein content and the fat content was taken out, it was felt that this could be a very good protein source and a meat substitute. So it was meant to really feed the masses in Eastern India. But then, unfortunately, it just never really caught on amongst the working class until the Sikh community, who were more in northwest India, the Sikh community started to experiment with it. And it's really when the Sikh community introduced soya into their recipes that it kind of caught on in India and then over time in the Indian diaspora. For example, as a child in Trinidad, in the 1980s, growing up as a vegetarian, I never heard of soya until perhaps soya chunks became part of the diet and cooked in Hindu and Muslim functions, pujas, prayer rituals, weddings, much later on, perhaps by the 90s. It caught on in Trinidad, Guyana, etc. So just like India, soybean or soya chunks rather, which is the byproduct, took a while to kind of catch on in the rest of the world. And there's a lot of reputation that soya has, good and sometimes notorious as well. People claim it has phytoestrogen from the plant matter, which is similar to the human hormone estrogen. And therefore it's been given a negative reputation as perhaps being bad for men to eat, because it could lead to high estrogen counts and therefore hormonal imbalances. This is actually true. If you exceed a daily intake of 25 to 30 grams. But if you eat soya once a week, a little bit, once a month, I don't see any problem. It's not going to create that issue. So any argument about soya leading to excessive estrogen intake is mythical, but could only be true if you eat it in ridiculously large amounts of volumes per day. So that will debunk the first myth. Another myth I came across, in Jamaica, people have this view, two views. One, a lot of people say they call it veggie chunks, and people in some of these restaurants, one lady told me, oh, it's vegetables in there, that's why we call it veggie chunks. And I'm telling her, no, it's not. It's vegetarian. It's vegan. It's not made out of vegetables. So don't try cooking soya and think, oh, I've gotten all my vitamin C content. I've gotten my carrots in there, my celery, my chive, my capsicum. Don't fool yourself. That is why my recipe, I will bring in some vegetables. And I might even mix in some carbohydrate or potato in there to give it, you know, some robust flavors and more of a balanced kind of meal. So don't think soya has vegetables in it. It isn't. It's really a byproduct of soya flour taken from soya beans. And in global food production, we in the Caribbean, we don't even know this. So sometimes we buy low quality soya. And what some companies do when they distribute it is they put added chemicals. Like the caramel one, there's a Jamaican brand that is simply awful. They put a lot of salt in it and caramel or sugar or browning, and they will, through myth I suppose, make people think that there are vegetables in there. It's not. No vegetables, none. So if you want to eat soya, go ahead. Why? It's vegetarian, it's vegan. Why? It is non-fatty. Why? It is high in protein content. Why? Because it has the ability to even help you lose weight if used in moderation. But do not mythically believe it is made out of vegetables. And on similar vein, or on the flip side, don't think it is responsible for, high hormonal imbalance. Let's debunk those myths. Perhaps these myths have arisen because the propaganda is against Brazil and India, large exporters of these products, the emerging economies of the world. Makes you wonder sometimes. So how are we going to make this soya? Into hot water, ridiculous boiling water for about 2 hours, I placed my soya here. Look at that. It was allowed to soak. And this is what gives soya the apparent, meaty texture that non-vegetarians like. I have no bloody clue about that. I'm vegetarian. But that's what meat eaters tell me. So, to each his own. So what you do is you soak this, and it rehydrates the soya. Right? Some people try to boil it. It's not necessary. If you soak it, it does the same job. And then what you do is we will drain this, and you will see that you can take out the moisture in it, and then it will be used for cooking, right? So I have to drain this, and I have to take out the moisture from the soya by squeezing it. Really important. You don't actually want to throw in the texture of the soya like this. We want to squeeze all the moisture out. In fact, some people in the Caribbean even season it as if it's meat or marinate, but there's no need to do that. You don't need to, after taking out the water, marinate it because it's not meat. You don't need, flavors to go through it. So don't do that. But what you do have to do is, like a famous chemistry teacher in St. Stephen's College once said, he declared that soya was wet cardboard. I agree. It is wet cardboard. So that's why you need to have layers of flavor. Layers of flavor. Here we go. So how will we make this? We could use a stew. We could do a curry. I'm going to do a kind of curry, and I'm going to introduce you to topping it up with some sesame oil at the end. It's a shocker. Yes, it is. So I'm going to try to show you my curry version of this, more inspired in a kind of Jamaican technique. So if we look here, I'm going to start my curry off with my Indian herbs. So if you're not from India or Guyana, Trinidad, you're not in the diaspora and you're like Jamaican or Grenadian, will you probably put in some of these herbs here? You might not. You might not want to put in the cumin, but cumin is good for you, right? Very good. And there's some curry pillai leaves, right? Now they're dehydrated. I don't have fresh ones. So I'm basically going to fry this into the oil in the beginning. Cumin or jeera is there with the curry pillai. So this is optional. Like if you're from a non-Indian culture and you don't want to handle the heat of these spices, don't do it. But special warning, the curry pillai leaves give off a very good flavor and you don't want to put plenty of it. But then you're seeing mine with a lot. Well, maybe that's because I like flavor. Then we go here. So after we saute, what you'll see me do is I'll kind of saute my onion, my ginger, my garlic. There's onion, ginger, garlic. You know, ginger and garlic go together a lot in Indian cuisine. And I have some fresh turmeric here. Jamaica has a lot of turmeric, more than Trinidad and Guyana. I find that the Jamaican curries tend to focus a lot on not using as much coriander, cumin, or nutmeg, elaichi, you know, cardamom, clove as the classic Indian curries. So they tend to make their curries with a higher concentration of turmeric. And I decided rather than using the powder, let me just use, you know, the turmeric root extract. So I just grated it on the fine grater, just like what I did with my ginger. Fun fact, I think it's a good idea to use the grater to even grate ginger, you know, because you don't want to put it in a food processor. I cubed some tomatoes here to give it the Indian kind of curry flavor, but we know West Indians don't like tomatoes in their curry. So if you want to make a West Indian curry, take out the tomatoes. And you know, if you want to make a more Afro-Caribbean curry, take out the cumin and the curry pillai. So as I said, this is my recipe. I have escallion. Of course I do. Escallion packs in flavor. And I'm also using less onions, so I prefer the spring onion effect. I have some Spanish thyme also here. Because, you know, throughout the Caribbean, when we buy the escallion, we get a little bit of thyme in there too. I hope I have enough time for this dish. Pun intended. And here we have my boring potato. Starchy, yes, but why do I use it? Some people say use Chinese style cornstarch and thicken it up. Thicken the curry up. Why on earth would I do that? Let's try to go more natural. Just use a potato. Everybody knows that potato, because it's starchy and once it's boiled well, it flakes off. It gives a kind of natural thickening to a lot of Indian curries and stews. Soups as well. Potato. We could have replaced this with a sweet potato, but the tragedy is I have none. That's why we're using, you know, one regular so-called Irish potato. In Jamaica, they call even the local potatoes Irish potatoes. Strange. Anyway, I guess they like to know where it's from. What about Scotch bonnet? Of course, if I had Scotch bonnet live, which I generally do, I would use it. But I'm trying to show you my pepper sauce here. This is pure Scotch bonnet infused with some other secret flavors. If you want to know how I make my pepper sauce, check out my video. I have a video showing you high quality lime infused pepper sauce. So I'm reverting to my lime infused pepper sauce. And if you want to buy my pepper sauce, contact me. Right? Contact me. I'm coming to Trinidad in May. And I'm sure I'll be in the US in April, May as well. So my lime infused pepper sauce, I do special orders for caterers. But I don't sell it as a commercial product because of high economies of scale. Such a sad reality. Okay, so now it's time to make my dish.